Hey everyone, I'm back with another video, and you'll notice that in the background I've got a spine, well, a picture of a spine laying on the floor. It just hasn't made its way up onto the wall yet, but we're making some gains in this little creator studio that I'm putting together. So in today's video I'm going to be talking about pain. How much should you be okay with when training? When should you modify training, and when do you need to stop training? Because this is a problem that a lot of people tend to have issues with. Often you'd think that it's quite a logical answer, but I have seen a few people that just don't seem to get it, and that they think that whatever the pain is, they're just going to push right on through. And I've never seen a single person where that's worked well for. So I'm going to try and clarify some of this information for you today. So the key thing to remember about pain during training is that it is more often than not, just a signal rather than telling you to stop. And for the most part, it does not mean that you have damaged anything. It's not tissue damage, okay? So this is one of the things I'm going to reiterate constantly. It's when things hurt, it doesn't mean that they're damaged or broken. It just means for people who are recreational athletes, active trainees and fitness enthusiasts, or amateur athletes, it's about a signal rather than a reason to stop. Especially if we're someone who is dealing with recurring issues, or we're training through like a long-standing period of pain, we need to not get so caught up on, is this hurting me right now? And it's really annoying me, even though the process can be very frustrating, but we need to try and track what the pain levels are and keep them predictable so that we can make meaningful decisions moving forward with training. And often the case is not, does this hurt during the session, but more, how am I pulling up from the session afterwards? What I want to do is introduce, I guess, 3 concepts here, and the first one is what is going to be safe pain, the second one's what's going to be cautionary pain, and then the third one is going to be what should I be really listening to here that's telling me I should probably back right off and potentially stop training. Safe pain. So this is something that you will often have when you're training. Even if you're not someone who's suffered recurring injuries, you're gonna train at times and things are gonna hurt. Something's gonna tweak, something's gonna niggle, especially if you're someone who's serious about training and you want to push the needle as hard as you can to get the best possible results you can. Then you're going to have times where something will just bother you, okay? Now, what is an okay level of bother to have? That's the main question here. So people who have mild to moderate amounts of pain during training, we can live with that. You're probably going to be fine, and you probably haven't damaged something, okay? Especially if it's just a one-off, or if it is a recurring issue, if it stays the same or improves over time. To put an objective number on this, I would generally say about a 4 out of 10 pain or less is where you want to exist. Pain's very subjective though, so what is 4 out of 10 for me is going to be different for 4 out of 10 for you. But that's okay, because you have to fully understand here that this is all a subjective experience. Pain is only ever a subjective experience. It differs between every single individual in the world. So you just need to put that number to it, and whatever you think is a 4 out of 10 for you is probably going to be right. But where this can get lost though is when serious trainees start lying to themselves and saying, all right, this is a 4 out of 10, but deep down you really know that it's a 6 out of 10, and you probably need to do something about that. This safe pain that I'm talking about, it's going to be something, like I said, is around a mild to moderate 4 out of 10 or less pain. It'll be something that settles pretty quickly after training, and you have almost zero post-training complications with it. It'll be something that doesn't worsen over the coming days. So when should we be adjusting for pain? So this is going to be something that, say, spikes really hard during a session. So if we've been either having no pain or low to moderate pain during the session, and suddenly you get this big spike and it just sits there and you're kind of not really sure whether it's going to settle. If you take a little bit of a break and then it settles back down, but then you try again and it spikes again, this is telling us that, hey, maybe this movement or this training session just needs to be aborted for the time being. The other thing to look for is if this is gradually getting worse over a few sessions combine? So does the accumulation of training load or volume cause that pain to gradually increase? And if it does, then we're probably just pushing the needle a little bit too hard, and we're going to have to back off a little bit. Now remember that with all of these things here, for this cautionary pain, you don't need to be too alarmed about it. Again, it's not necessarily a tissue damage problem, it's just giving us an insight that we're pushing the needle a little bit too hard and we're getting closer to the edge of that cliff. We haven't gone off it yet, but we're getting closer to the point where this could become an issue if we keep pushing too hard and causing this to really flare up and become bigger than what it necessarily needs to be. So when is pain an issue? This is a common question that people ask me, and the biggest thing to look for is how you're pulling up after training. So obviously during training, if it gets to the point where it's not tolerable, or if you're going sort of beyond that 5, 6 out of 10 pain, but after training is where you really want to be paying attention here in the subsequent 24 to 48 hour window. And if you're having like pretty big losses of function, or you're having pretty big increases in pain post-training, potentially accompanied by some swelling, maybe not though, then this is a sign that you've just pushed it way too hard and you actually have probably just dropped off the cliff a little bit. And again, it doesn't mean you've damaged the tissue, it just means that you've pushed a sensitive tissue way too hard, and it's telling you that you need to back off and give it some space so it can settle down, and then you just reevaluate and slowly build back into that training stimulus again. The other thing you need to be looking for is any potential increases in night pain, like especially if it's getting severe, if you're losing some serious strength or stability, if any other symptoms arise that don't seem to be fitting the current presentation, then you need to go and seek help for this from a qualified professional face to face. Overall, with all of this stuff, we need to make sure that we are not just adjusting like session to session or rep to rep on the fly. We need to be taking data over time, potentially week to week, potentially month to month, depending on the injury or recurring issue that we're having, and the time scale that this could be recurring over. So one rep that causes you grief is not necessarily a bad rep or a bad thing, and you haven't broken anything. It's just data that you need to note and potentially plan for over the coming sessions. And if you are having a constant worsening in pain, then this is the signal that you need to adjust load, because it's telling you that you're just pushing a little bit too hard. And remember, there's a lot of common mistakes with this sort of thing, and so make sure that if something does just flare up on you, you don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater and call it a day, because if it flares up one time, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's broken and it's an absolute disaster. You just need to back off a little bit and then potentially modify things so you can start moving forward again. Definitely don't push through absolutely every piece of pain. Like I said, it doesn't work well, and no one's ever had a good outcome doing that. And then the other thing I want you to remember is try not to get caught up on expecting everything to be pain-free, because it's just not realistic. Especially if you're someone who's had recurring issues in the past, this may not be a realistic thing for you over the short to moderate term. It's going to have to be a long-term goal. And if you're someone who is pushing the needle really hard because you have some serious goals you want to chase, even if you haven't had recurring issues, you're probably going to have pain from time to time, because that's just part of the nature of pushing things to the limit when you want to try and get as good as you can at something. So in summary of all of that, make sure we're using pain as feedback. We're not using it to say we're training today or we're not. We're just going to use it. If we need to modify things, we can do that. If we don't need to modify things, we don't need to. We just keep going as planned. So remember, like I said, don't just use pain as a yes/no answer. It's too grey for that. It's not black and white. And just because you do have some pain doesn't mean you're going backwards, okay? And more often than not, you're actually going forwards. Even if when you're in the weeds of doing that thing, it doesn't feel like it. But as long as you keep pulling up from training okay, and it stays manageable during training, you're going to be alright. You're going to keep progressing forwards, and you're going to get to that point on the other side where you can train a little bit more freely as long as you continue to load manage your way there. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If it did help you gain a little bit more perspective and clarity, please give it a like, share and subscribe. I'm looking forward to posting more videos over the coming weeks, months and hopefully years. And if you would like me to clarify anything or would like to discuss further, please post a comment below. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.